So good morning, everybody. Welcome. Lovely to have you here. If you could shove into the chat just some words on why you're here, what made you sign up to these webinars and say, I'm going to invest a few hours of my time learning about marketing strategy for social enterprises. That would be fantastic. So this is the second of 5 webinars, and today we're going to be diving down into the detail of how to successfully set realistic marketing objectives. Do let me know if you're not able to make any of the other sessions in this series, and shove your email address into the chat, and I'll make sure you receive the recordings. In terms of objectives for today, same as last time, really. 3 objectives: to provide you with support around the key issues that many social enterprises and charities that trade and businesses that put purpose before profit, those sorts of organizations are facing as they grow. To provide you with an opportunity to ask questions, and to start building a community of like-minded leaders in organizations that put purpose before profit. If you've got a question, do just shove it into the chat box, and we'll answer it at the end. Format for today: 30 minutes of me talking to you about marketing strategy for social enterprises, and then 15 minutes at the end for discussion on this or anything else that's on your mind to do with building your organization's capacity. Briefly on me, I'm Ned Wells. I'm here with my colleague Charlotte, who's helping to make this a smooth Zoom experience. Charlotte's also a marketing consultant, and she offers a brilliant line in sustainable marketing. I've worked in marketing since 2020 as an employee, freelancer, and owner of 2 successful marketing businesses. And I've helped hundreds of organizations of every hue achieve their marketing and growth objectives. In 2018, I had a bit of a change of heart. I was, with the sort of benefit of hindsight, after I'd left my my business in 2018, I kind of realized that I'd got sick of helping organizations that just sort of sell stuff, and sort of realizing that I don't think the world needs more general stuff. So for the last 5 years, I've worked exclusively with social enterprises, charities that trade, and businesses that put purpose before profit. So all my clients are doing something environmentally or socially valuable. Now, on to today. So last time I introduced you to the overall marketing strategy framework. We took a quick look through all 4 of the components. So the current situation: what do you do today? What does your organization look like today? Target market: who needs your product or services, and what problems do they solve for them? Objectives: where do you want to be in a time frame that makes sense for your organization? That might be 2 years, might be 3, 4, etc. And then the implementation. Now we understand those first 3 things, we can now begin to put a plan together. In this session, we're going to look at realistic objective setting and how to create practical vision statements. So first of all, we're going to look at a practical formula for laying out your qualitative objectives, i.e., what should you aim to be? What should your organization aim to be? Second, a simple formula for quantifying your objectives. I mean, briefly, that means how much growth do you want to achieve? How much more do you want to sell? Thirdly, understanding how to create a realistic vision statement that your team can get behind. How do you get your team on board? And then lastly, some tips for getting buy-in from your wider team. Now, this might mean wider stakeholders. You might need to win budgetary approval, or you might need to get buy-in from all sorts of other folks around the organization in order to make this marketing plan fly. So I'm going to start off with sales, just talking about it. So the first thing I'd like to address is sales, because really you are going to be wanting to sell more of your service or your product. But sort of qualitatively, talking about selling in a charity or a social enterprise context can be really tricky, because nobody wants to be seen as dull. Boy. Is everybody familiar with this this crew? Only Fools and Horses? Yep. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to tell you a story. Last year, I badgered the chief executive of a local charity here in Oxford to send his top team on a sales training course. And there was all sorts of resistance, because sales feels can feel grubby. And I'm always reminded of these two from Only Fools and Horses. Anyway, I eventually convinced him to get his team onto the sales course. And what was fascinating was there was a kind of penny dropping moment when they understood that sales, when done right, is actually about helping people. Because sales is about understanding the problems that they have and whether or not you can solve them for them. And as socially and environmentally focused people, helping is kind of what we're all about. The reason I'm telling you this is because your business objectives should be expressed in this way. Here's the model for laying out your qualitative business objectives. Now, sometimes it's called a value statement or an objective statement or a vision statement, but whatever you choose to call it, it describes who you serve, and that might be your beneficiaries, your partners, your funders, or your customers, kind of depending on who you're marketing to. And then it's the problem that they have that you can solve, and kind of why they should choose you. What's the sort of the differentiator? And you can see that note there, that if it just says, because we go the extra mile, or we really care, or whatever, then that's not really a differentiator, because everyone can say that. Right, let's get down into this in a little bit more detail. So your objective statement should describe who you help, what you help them to do, what you help them to achieve, so what's the outcome, why it's better for them to work with you than to sort of maintain the status quo, and why they should choose you. So let's see if we can bring that to life with some examples. One of my clients is a charity in Oxford called Aspire, and they've got their fingers in all sorts of different pies, but broadly they call themselves an employment and housing charity, or they do loads of other things. And last year I was doing some visioning work with the chief executive, and they wanted a sort of crisp description of a sort of new unit within the charity that merged two existing projects. They had one that helps local businesses to offer their staff sort of employee volunteering roles within charities. They're kind of a matchmaking service. And the other was an inclusive recruitment service, so helping local employers to hire people from diverse and different unconventional backgrounds, so ex-offenders, ex-military, people who had experience of homelessness, and so on. So the vision statement that we brought together is this one. It's quite wordy, but I'll go through it. So they were saying at Aspire that we help purposeful senior leaders and HR directors with a social value ambition in Oxfordshire, so really specific, to improve their recruitment, retention, and productivity, which are good, important sort of commercial things you want to do, whilst engaging meaningfully with the third sector, which is a really nice thing to be aspiring to. Why would they want to do that, these purposeful senior leaders? Well, they'll be increasing their own competitiveness, meeting their social value aims, and engaging more deeply with their community and their staff. And why would they want to do that? Well, because otherwise they're just using traditional recruitment agencies, and they're not engaging with their community. And why should these purposeful senior leaders and HR directors choose Aspire? Well, because Aspire has trusted relationships and a track record of delivering inclusive recruitment and employee volunteering with the third sector and public and private organizations. So quite wordy, but what's good about it is that it frames the service that Aspire offers in words that place the customer at the heart of what they're doing. Here's another one. This is mine. What do we do at Cicada? We help CEOs and directors of medium-sized social enterprises and charities that trade. Now, medium-sized can mean anything to anybody, so it's kind of helpful to put some numbers in there. And obviously, if somebody was to turn up and go, well, we'd like you to work with us, but we're not making $500,000 yet. And you go, well, let's have a conversation. But it's just sort of helps you to frame kind of where you want to be aiming. And we help these sorts of organizations to successfully sell their services and products through better marketing, sales, business processes, and techie systems, so that they can deliver more of their charitable mission sustainably through the sort of the commercial service they've asked me to help with, or by using the resulting surplus to subsidize their non-commercial projects. Lots of charities can't possibly have a sort of commercial model because they don't have something to sell, but they still want to do their charitable mission. And if they can fund that by having a social enterprise arm, then that's great. Why do they want to do this? Well, they want to grow those commercial services so they're not dependent on their often restricted income from fundraising sources. Why should they choose me? Well, because as a management consultant, marketing specialist, and founder of 2 successful businesses, I've helped lots of organizations of every hue to achieve their commercial goals. So that's my value statement, really specific. And once again, it places my customers right at the middle of it. Okay, so now let's look at a formula for quantifying your objectives. I'm sure this will be familiar to lots of you. Have you seen the SMART framework before? Yep, it's fairly well known. Quickly, so you're looking to quantify where you want to be in a way that's specific, that you can measure it, that it's achievable, kind of makes sense, it's relevant, and it's time bound. A couple of examples. Here's one from a very famous one from the 1960s. So President Kennedy in 1961 proposed that the US should commit itself to achieving the goal before the decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely. It's specific, it's measurable. You you can measure whether you've managed to get your man to the moon and home again. Is it achievable? Well, he thought it was. He um, um, pushed everybody involved to their absolute limit, but in the end, they achieved it. Was it relevant? Well, the USSR in 1961 had already put a man into orbit, and the US was falling behind in the space race. So to JFK and to Congress, sending a man to the moon and bringing him back wasn't only relevant, but it was absolutely crucial to their sort of national interests in their view. And is it time bound? Yes, because they want to achieve this before the end of the decade. Here's another slightly more sort of relatable one. I made this up for Aspire. They do have specific objectives, but I've not shared the actual ones with you. But you could see that to have secured partnership contracts with 15 employers at an average value of £3,000 per year each, that places 30 candidates into secure and dignified work before the end of this financial year. I think that hits all the requirements of SMART fairly well. Okay, just a quick reminder of our agenda. We've looked at a practical formula for laying out your qualitative objectives. What should you aim to be? A simple formula for quantifying your objectives and how much growth do you wish to achieve. So let's go on to part 3 about vision statements. So what is a vision statement and why on earth do you need one? I'll just let you look through that. So a vision statement is a sort of idealistic, emotional future for your organization. You're aiming to paint a picture of something wonderful for everybody to aim for. Now, when I've done this in the past, sometimes for smaller organizations, it makes sense to do a vision statement for the whole organization. Sometimes for larger organizations, you're talking to a marketing team and you can't really influence the vision for the whole organization. So you're going to do one for just the marketing function, and that's fine as well. To create a vision statement, imagine you're meeting in maybe 5 years' time and write down what you've achieved and what was hard, what went well. There's an example I've pulled together here, which is loosely based on some work I did with a client, a national charity that offers various paid for services alongside their charitable work. And it's a stretching vision of a sort of really organized and successful social enterprise. And the client at the time that I was working with them weren't very organized. I'll read that out. So it's January 2028, and Acme Enterprises leadership team are meeting to plan their next long-range strategy. The last 5 years has seen a period of stellar growth, generating £15 million in revenue. And at 10% profit, it's delivered a surplus of £1.5 million into their charitable activities. Services are delivered by 200 staff around the country from their hubs. And the marketing function has grown from being a single a part-time marketing manager with top cover from an external consultant. Have a guess who that might have been, to a team of 3 full-time marketeers, each focusing on one service. And they report to a marketing director who's responsible for generating sales inquiries across all their revenue-generating services. There was an element of impact in there too in the vision statement I wrote, but I've left that out because for confidentiality reasons. Now, I just made this up for them when I was writing their marketing strategy. And when I wrote it down, I was a bit worried that they'd think it was sort of silly and not credible and sort of huge and unachievable. But in fact, they loved it and they could really visualize it. And it kind of really motivated the team to come together behind something that they really wanted to aim for. So my final item this morning is about getting buy-in for your marketing plan from wider stakeholders. And I've had several sort of penny dropping moments trying to get buy-in. And one of them was about this kind of aspirational sort of storytelling. But how you get buy-in depends really on the personalities that you're dealing with. So for some sort of analytical personalities, a kind of really rigorous review of the current situation, as we were looking at last week, can sort of spark the energy in them to make changes and to invest in something new. And for more sort of empathic people, a kind of lively buyer persona workshop, and again, we looked at personas last week. And folks, quite often when we sort of go down into their buyer personas with them, they start off by kind of not really understanding why you're doing it. And then as you began to paint a sort of multicolored picture of who you serve and the problems they have and how you can solve them, that can really work. Going back to this more sort of analytical and project management-y types of people, often a kind of risk management approach can be key, and we'll look at that in a later session. And then finally, for sort of senior decision makers and for budget holders, actually being very frank about the business or the charity's kind of weaknesses can be key. You can open up a sort of grown-up conversation about what needs to happen, and it can be a relief for them that you've sort of spotted the weaknesses, and you may have a credible plan to improve things. Okay, that's it for today's session. If you'd like to make a start on your own marketing strategy, then please feel free to download my marketing strategy workbook. Charlotte, are you okay to shove the links into the chat? The marketing strategy workbook takes you through the 4 sections that we talked about and asks you all the sort of questions that you need to answer to build your social enterprises marketing strategy and plan. And if you'd like to discuss any of this one-to-one with me, then please do visit my my Calendly link and book a call and let's have a chat. I'm going to unshare that so I can see you properly. Ah, fantastic. How did that go? Are there any questions? What do you reckon? I'm going to have a quick slurp on my tea.
No, that was all good. It's good to kind of just get these the bottom kind of building blocks in place to figure out how you build the strategy on top of it, because that's where I'm struggling. It's like where to begin.
Yeah, and I mean, I say it sort of sounds a bit trite when I say that marketing is a great way to spend money, but you know, you could spend an awful lot on marketing. You could spend an awful lot of time on marketing, and it leads to absolutely nothing. And you go, well, why? And what am I doing wrong? And actually, it's investing in these kind of research phases where you're thinking really hard about where are we at the moment? Where do we want to be realistically and sensibly? Who do we serve? What are the problems that they're experiencing? And going down into those 3 in real detail sort of reveals, because you can say, well, okay, we've looked at the fact that, you know, we serve, you know, adults with primary age children, and they're frantically busy and they're never going to have time to read endless newsletters, but actually they too spend time on Instagram, in between meetings. So perhaps that should be a channel that we should be exploring, for example. But then there'll be other folks who go, well, then, they're just not the demographic to go anywhere near Instagram. And actually it's sort of the occasional email newsletter just to remind them that we're here with helpful information. So that's the sort of the pre-work you do is absolutely key in sort of revealing how you should be going about talking to these people, and sort of showing that you understand their problems, and that that you can solve their problems. So the problem is, my husband and I work full time. We've got hectic jobs. We love our children, but we just can't be there for them at 3 o'clock every day or during the holidays. So who can we find that will give them a lovely outdoor, safe, mind-broadening, local, affordable experience? And there you are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Any other questions?
Well, yeah, I'm thinking along the lines of House of Fun, actually, because I sort of vaguely know it. My kids refuse to go to any blimmin' holiday clubs, which is very, very frustrating, but we're working on it. But I guess it's about assessing objectives, like how many is too many, is one not enough, those kinds of questions. And also, I guess not all of them are as quantifiable as they could be. Some are sort of softer. I mean, you've talked about like qualitative and quantitative sort of objectives, but some are more easy to quantify than others, right? So sorry, there were two questions there, but first one is really how many should you set?
Sure. So the simple answer is it completely depends, but that's not very helpful. And I think it's the exercise of sort of working through in an organized way, and asking yourselves the questions: what do our objectives look like? And having the conversation will reveal that. A more helpful answer, I think, is that very often when I'm working with social enterprises, it sort of comes out that whatever they do, there's typically a social objective. So for House of Fun, we're going to be giving your children a wonderful, learning, fun, safe experience. And there's real sort of social good there. They're learning about the outdoors, they're learning to interact with other people and so forth. So there's a social one. There's very often an environmental one. And again, House of Fun, you're outdoors, they're learning about the countryside, they're learning about the woods. There's an environmentally sort of solid objective that you have. And then there's a financial one. We have to make money, we've got to make surplus to keep the lights on and to pay our staff and invest for the future and so forth. So typically three: a social, an environmental, and a financial one. Does that answer your question?
That's really helpful. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Emily and Izzy, any questions from you? We're a sort of smaller group this morning, so do feel free to jump in with any questions.
I guess I was sort of just thinking it's quite interesting because I'm sort of part of a very, very small team. So it is just myself and one other person who sort of handle kind of bit of a range of things, but sort of overarchingly like comms and marketing and with a bit of like policy and things. And so I guess I'm just sort of very interested into, when it is such a small team covering quite a wide sort of remit of things, just like what those real focus areas are, because I think we've sort of struggled with resources and lack of capacity and things to really have a marketing strategy that really makes that impact. And I know sometimes it can be, it's a much longer process. Sometimes, it takes a lot of sort of input to then start seeing kind of outcomes on things. But I think, that's kind of what I was just really interested in is how can you really build those solid foundations, and what are the kind of real focus points when it comes to a very small team?
Sure. So the absolutely sort of most essential thing for you guys to be doing is thinking about your buyer personas. So what I would do is I would start off with a little kind of brainstorming exercise to say, who are all the sort of characters that we work with, that we serve. Now, clearly, using that kind of language, you're going to be starting off thinking about your beneficiaries. But in a sort of marketing sense, it's your funders and your sort of stakeholders that you want to be thinking about. So who are the people that are going to be giving us money or buying our services in some way? And you should be listing those. And then when you've made that list and it's really long, if you go into the sort of, as we did last week, the sort of what are the triggers, what are the goals, why should they talk to us, why are we relevant, what are the problems that they are experiencing as funders that engaging with us will solve. And typically what happens is you sort of start off with quite a long list of all these folks that you could in effect sell to or market to, but you'll find that there's some perhaps some commonalities between them, and a sort of clear priority list. And then you can say, well, we could market to this very wide range of sort of individuals, or we could just focus on, for now, the top two, which is what I would strongly encourage you to do. And by saying you should focus on the top two isn't to say you should ignore everybody else, but you should go down the sort of 80-20 rule, perhaps. So if we're going to be doing a sort of really focused marketing campaign, targeting this particular sort of individual who wants to buy our service, or rather I should say this particular individual whose problems will be solved by buying our services. And then you go down into the sort of the content marketing approach of, well, let's write, let's create content on our blog and our social media and podcasts and webinars and all the rest of it that shows them that we understand the problems they're experiencing, and by engaging with us, that will help them. But by going through the sort of buyer persona process, that really helps you to zoom in on the sort of niche that you should be speaking to. Does that help?
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think we've definitely spoken as a team that we really need to have a bit of a session where we go through user personas, because I think part of it is we've probably just aren't entirely sure who our audience is some of the time, or we have quite a it is quite a niche sort of program that isn't necessarily well known, but then within the industry is very well known. But then it's kind of, and for us, it is definitely funders, but we're based within the NHS. So it's also kind of like key clinicians and other sort of professionals. And we do a lot of partnership work, kind of with, mental health services or housing services. So it'd also be just kind of having a real brainstorm and mapping out all those individual groups of people. And I think sometimes we've just got a bit lost in terms of always knowing who those groups are.
Indeed. Yes, I can see that it is really complex and very it's very easy to get lost when you've got so many stakeholders, and as you say, so few of you in the team. It can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, do drop me a note or check out my my Calendly if you'd like a hand with that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool.
Ned, could you unspotlight yourself so that we can see who's? I don't know who that was talking. Was that Emily or Izzy?
Remove spotlight. There we go.
Sorry, that was me, Izzy.
That was Izzy. Hi, Izzy.
Jolly good. Well, we're reaching 1:45, so
Well, can I just check? Was Izzy here last week? Just in case you didn't see this persona section.
Yeah, I was here last
Yeah.
week.
You got the recording as well, because that might be quite helpful just to go over that again. But yeah.
Definitely. I'm actually on leave next week, so I won't be here, but hopefully my colleague should be back in time.
fantastic. Jolly good. Well, thank you so much for coming. Lovely to see you. And see you next week.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thanks so
Take
much.
care.
Take
Bye
care.
now.
Bye, everyone.